Hi everyone, welcome back to Nibs, the podcast. I'm your host, Milanist.
And I'm your host, Paul Antonio, and this is where we discuss
Everything about calligraphy, lettering, and sign painting, and other stuff. So, how are you doing, Paul? So much time since the last time we recorded.
Yes, I know. Just so much happening as well.
It's true. It's funny because when we started, we were actually this is the second time we're beginning of the year we started with okay, we're gonna record like crazy. We recorded few episodes, bam, huge pause. Then we recorded a few more, bam, you had to move to Portugal. I had to move somewhere. Like, guys, maybe this is gonna be 1 or 2 episodes and maybe we'll take another break. No, I'm just kidding. I hope this not doesn't happen anymore because lots of people are actually they enjoyed the podcast and so many people were asking, come on, when is gonna be a new episode of Nibs podcast? Here, finally we are back.
Yay!
And today we're gonna discuss some interesting topics. I think we should start with the one because was actually suggested by someone on Instagram, and the one for about being certified calligrapher. This is funny because I remember when I started calligraphy, I don't know why, but this was something that I was looking for. Somehow I had the idea that I have to go somewhere, get a course or something, and then I have to get a certificate in order to become a calligrapher. And this is actually not the story. I mean,
And you and I have had this conversation before where we discussed certification. I think there are a number of issues around certification. Unfortunately, calligraphy is not as rigorously managed as other professions. You know, if you want to be a plumber, you can't just decide to be a plumber, right? And goes messing up people's taps and flooding their houses.
Yeah, like go watch some YouTube videos how to become a plumber.
And you know, don't get me wrong, there are lots of people who do their own plumbing at home. But if you want to do plumbing for somebody else and you want to have insurance and you want to have you know, some kind of backing from some governing body, you must have gone on the course, done the right training, and of course, embedded in that training is health and safety measures, and gotten the certification, and you have to continually go onto professional development courses. So certification in other professions tends to be a little bit more rigorous. In calligraphy, it's sort of ad hoc. It's a little bit haphazard. Now, just to start off, I am actually certified because I went and I studied calligraphy.
I was just about to ask you if you are certified.
I trained as a calligrapher, a gilder, and heraldic artist. I graduated from Reigate School of Art and Design with a distinction on my course. I graduated from Birkbeck with a distinction on my paleography course. And I graduated with a distinction on my Middle Kingdom Egyptian translation course. So, you know, I am certified.
But how many certificates do you have?
By universities. So
okay.
this is not just some sort of ad hoc certification, right?
What do you mean by this?
Now, what I mean by this is not somebody telling you, oh, if you study calligraphy with me, I'll give you a certificate. This is a governing body that has given me this certificate based on a rigorous program of study. Now, unfortunately, the two courses that ran calligraphy, one at Reigate, which taught calligraphy, gilding, and heraldic painting, and one at Roehampton University, which taught calligraphy and bookbinding. And eventually the course moved to Sunderland University, where you could do an MA in calligraphy. All those courses do not exist anymore. So you cannot go to an institution and study. My course was 2 years. The one at Roehampton was also 2 years. The one at Sunderland was 3 years. So you can't get that kind of certification in the United Kingdom anymore. Now, there is the European Lettering Institute run by Lever Cornell, and Lever has a brilliant school. Lots of people go there. I mean, I think it's a 2 or 3 year course.
Where is it based?
I think it's in Denmark.
Denmark? What? Are you joking?
And you left Denmark.
No, the thing is, what I started, when I started, I was searching for stuff, but when I was searching where to go get certificate, I was actually in Copenhagen. And now you're telling me this, I'm like, what? What?
So now there are other institutes where you can get certification, but it really sort of depends on the kind of certification. For instance, what's it called? There's a school in New York, Cooper Union, and you can do courses in type and lettering and that kind of thing. But they're more geared to typography rather than calligraphy. Then, of course, you have certification through guilds and societies. So the Calligraphy and Lettering Arts Society, which is also known as CLAS. Mm-hmm. CLAS is the umbrella society in the United Kingdom where lots of people and guilds belong to. They are very much like the SSI, which is the Society of Scribes and Illuminators, but they both have different remits, and they sort of, they have different outlooks on their proposition for the progress of calligraphy and how they think calligraphy should work. So CLAS is a little bit more overarching. There are lots more, because it's not just calligraphy, it's also lettering arts as well. Whereas the SSI, they are historically tied to the fact that they evolved out of Edward Johnston's students wanting to come together and teach the craft of manuscript illumination. So you had to be able to do calligraphy, prepare vellum, prepare pigments, do gilding. So really sort of traditional skills. And most of us are members of both CLAS and the SSI.
Who is this most of us?
Well, most of the calligraphers in the United Kingdom are members of both, right? Now, okay. There are people all over the world who are also members of both. Through the Calligraphy and Lettering Arts Society, you have multiple special interest groups. So one of the special interest groups is the Copperplate Special Interest Group. We also have things like the Spencerian Special Interest Group, which was run by Brian Walker, who has since passed away 3 years ago, unfortunately. And there are other specialist groups embedded in CLAS that are particular to certain things, all sort of lettering related. Mm-hmm. CLAS run a certificate ladder of progress, which you have to systematically work through different scripts as you move through the ladder of progress. They run courses, they run online courses, and they have certified teachers who have studied, who have a diploma in teaching, adult education teaching. So that diploma comes from the government. So you have to actually study through the government to do it. Once you get the diploma in teaching, you can then set up your classes through the CLAS, sort of under the CLAS umbrella, as either an accredited tutor or a recognized tutor. If you don't have this certification from the government, you can apply through CLAS as a recognized tutor because you've been teaching for a long time.
Wait, so
let me finish.
In order to teach people and to be able to give them certificates that actually is like proper certificate, you have to be allowed?
You should be allowed.
You should be.
Well, through the Calligraphy and Lettering Arts Society, what they realized, so there's a large tradition of adult education teaching in the United Kingdom. In order to teach at an adult education center, the centers generally require you to do an adult education teaching certificate. So you go to school for, I think it's 12 weeks, and they teach you how to teach, how to build your course plan, how to do your outline, how to manage the time of the students, how to correct their work. So, they teach you how to teach. So the Calligraphy and Lettering Arts Society have accredited tutors who have done this and have this certificate from the government. Or if you've been teaching for a long time and you've never done this, the government certificate, like me, I've never done the certificate because I just never had the time to do it. But I've been teaching for a long time. So if I apply for, to be on the tutor list, it's very easy for me to do that. Because I have experience and I can be recommended by other teachers who've been in my classes.
So you've been illegal so long time.
I'm not illegal.
Yes,
you might be illegal.
You
might be legal with your crazy fracture, but I'm certainly not illegal.
Wait, I'm not teaching anyone. What do you mean?
You're influencing people.
What? I'm not. You're the one teaching people without being allowed.
I am allowed. I had a position as a Crown Office scribe, so don't start here.
You're not.
Anyway, right. So that's class. So that's sort of how class works. So the certification of class is you join a course, you do the course, it's taught by an accredited tutor or by one of the non-accredited tutors, and you have to produce assignments and you are assessed at the end of the course. Mm-hmm. Depending on what you do for your final assignment, you then get told whether or not you can move to the next level or if you need to repeat the course. So that's quite good because it really helps to formalize your understanding of the script. So you're not just sort of producing any sort of nonsense and handing it in and saying, oh, this is italic, when it obviously isn't italic. You are trained to do the script so that they're trying to help you to later on share information about that particular script, which is correct. Mm-hmm. The Society of Scribes and Illuminators have a course called the Advanced Training Scheme. So the Advanced Training Scheme is for people who are at a certain level of calligraphy and want to take their craft further. So it's 3 years, you meet twice a year, and you have tutors for each year, and you have homework to do during the year. So that's the accreditation scheme from the Society of Scribes and Illuminators. There are other accreditation schemes from other guilds. For instance, the International Association of Engrossers and Master Penmen, which is IAMPATH, they have an accreditation certification program, which they took out of circulation to sort of revamp the program, and they've just started it back up. So if you want to study something like Spencerian script or ornamental penmanship or Palmer script or bird flourishing, these are within the remit of the golden age of American penmanship. You don't really study things like textualis quadrata or Roman capitals because they really focus on American penmanship sort of between 1860 to 1960.
The boring stuff.
It's not boring. It's actually quite fun. So
yeah, it could be fun, but how can you not teach quadrata and like this is, come on.
Because that's not within the remit of American penmanship. That's something slightly different. We can talk about that later.
Of course.
Then you have people offering certification. So there are some people who offer certification. For instance, David Grimes. So David Grimes, Dreaming in Script, does a certification course on engrosser script. Now, David has spent a lot of time, effort, and energy and research perfecting engrosser script and figuring out how to teach it. And he has a really rigorous program of certification. So I don't normally support other calligraphers running certification programs because invariably they do not have a sufficiently rigorous and demanding approach to the script that they need to do in order to offer certification. Mm-hmm. David is an exception. So David has an amazing certification program. I'm just starting to put together my certification program because I know my program is rigorous. And students who study with me, they don't just get calligraphy, they also have to study the history of it. So we're just starting to work on that.
So people will be able to get certificate if they participate in your classes, workshops, or something like this?
No, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So the way that we're looking at it is, obviously we have lectures, we have workshops, and we have classes. So the lecture is an historical understanding of the script, and where it's come from, where it was at its peak, and where it evolved, in which script it evolved into, and how it's used today. So the lecture really helps you to get an overarching view of the script itself.
Okay, but we're gonna continue speaking about this next week.
Part 2. Okay, in this part of the podcast, we decided to talk a bit about brush pens, and more particularly about brush pens for beginners. Paul said that this is an interesting topic. I think it is interesting as well, because this is something that I was afraid for a very long time. I think I've spoken before about it. I owned brush pens for like 6-7 years before I dared to start writing with them. They were just sitting somewhere and I was afraid. I was thinking it's so hard to write with them. And yeah, I've been writing with brush pens for the last year or something like this. Before this, I just had some wrong ideas about them.
And when you wrote with them, were they able to write? Because 6 years they would have dried out.
No, they were actually writing, of course. They were. No, actually, the truth is that I was using them, but I was using them in this very, like, cues. He makes this, it's not correct, just caps. I was doing, it's still letters, but I was using them just for something which I was doing it. Sometimes it was looking okay, but before this, I never used them in order to make like thin and thick lines, which I started like for the last few months. And since I started, I actually fall in love with brush pens. And I've actually experienced so many, not so many brush pens, a bunch of them. But my idea is, my favorite one so far is the Tombow Pocket one, with the small tip. Yes, I really love this one. And actually, I got a Pentel, which is similar. It's again with a small tip, but still there is such a huge difference.
So that's either the Pentel Touch or the Pentel Sign Pen.
It's this one.
Yep, that's it. Pentel Sign Pen.
It looks exactly the same as the Tombow, but there is such a huge difference writing with them.
It doesn't look like the Tombow. What is wrong with you?
Come on. Here.
The Tombow's tip is thinner and longer and finer, and the Pentel Touch is wider at the base where it gets into the ferrule.
Are you sure?
I wasn't asking you a question.
Wait, here, I got them. Look. Come on, they're the same.
They are not the same. Is that the soft Fudenosuke, or is that the...
I have both. Both.
That's the soft Fudenosuke.
Yeah, and here is the hard one.
Okay, so you see how very different those two tips are.
I actually don't see. It's not because of the glasses. Those glasses have no diopter or something. This is just for the computer. But yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting topic. Also, if you follow Paul Antonio, he has so much. He is writing so much with brush pens and use variety of them. And yeah, I think it's gonna be super interesting to hear some tips and tricks, information directly from the king of brush pens.
So I always say that I'm very fortunate, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that I'm so fortunate to be able to do what I do. I had the honor, pleasure, good fortune to work with Kuretake on testing their products to them. So Kuretake makes the widest range of brush pens in the world.
Okay.
There are brush pens that Kuretake makes which do not make it into the West.
But you have them.
Yes.
Why? No.
Because they just gave them to me. The first time I saw the full range of tools Kuretake makes, I really could not believe my eyes. Now, my idea of brush pen work is based around my very technical understanding. So the first thing I did when I started working with brush pens was I tried to figure out a better classification system for the brush pens. So I don't use the standard terminology that people use. So first, I've split the brush pens into two categories. The first category are filamented brush pens. So people would call these bristled brush pens, but you know, if you actually paint with paint, bristled brushes are generally hog hair and they're very stiff and rigid. Sable brushes, which you'd use for watercolor painting, are very fine and they're made from fur. So these are natural hair brushes. I call the bristle brush pens, I call them filamented brush pens because they're actually made of really fine man-made filaments. They tend to not be natural hair. Mm-hmm. I like to make this distinction between filamented brush pens because those are man-made fibers and real hair brush pens like a Winsor Newton Series 7 Kolinsky sable brush. So those are expensive brushes. They work wonderfully for writing, but you know, they're not cheap.
Are they brushes or brush pens?
No, they're brushes. So
why talk about brushes? We're talking about brush pens.
Well, because you need a little bit of context. So this is that's the Series 7.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so that's it there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a real brush.
Yeah.
Now, brush pens, the filamented ones, are based on this.
Okay.
Of course, they're actually based on these. Let's get this here.
Yeah.
Right. So the filamented ones are man-made fibers, and they work in different ways. The fibers spread when you apply pressure, and they come back. If you press too hard, they sort of break apart. So what you do is you press, pull, twist, and roll and pull until it twizzles them back into a point. The next type of brush pen is something that most people call a felt tip brush pen. I don't like using the word felt tip because invariably the tips are not felt. So in these felt tip, or what I refer to as spongy tip brush pens, you can have large ones like the Zig brushable. So that's a big one. Or the Karen marker.
Yeah, this is Karen.
That for me is a spongy tip brush pen. What are you doing?
I'm just smelling it. Don't you ever smell them?
No.
I always do this.
Yeah, I can see where this is going. A kid with glue.
No, come on. They have like some. Oh, just leave it, guys. Let me know if somebody else is ever smelling their pens and inks.
I smell my paper. I smell paper and books, but I don't smell my pens.
So I'm weird because I smell my pens.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll explain to you. Explain to you why not to do this. Right? Get some Sumi ink, okay?
Yeah. What?
Get some Sumi ink and put it in a jar.
Oh.
Okay. Now you understand why I don't smell your brush pens.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, if they're like super old, don't do them. But if they're new, like those brush pens are brand new, so.
Okay, so.
Fair enough. Let's continue.
Just so that you know what we're talking about. If Sumi ink is made from carbon and an organic binder. If you leave it if you leave it for too long, the binder rots. And trust me, this is the first time you smell it, you will never put your nose to a bottle of ink ever again. It is.
Yeah, I remember my first time, my Sumi ink went like, I'm opening and I was like, I was like, what's going on here? Like, who?
Anyway, so
Yeah.
So Kuretake Zig make these brushables, and the tip is quite, that's a big tip for a spongy tip brush pen. So in my classification, you have tip size. So we have large, medium, small, and extra small. And then you have flexibility. So this has a medium flexibility, so it can bend. Now, the Karen markers, which Milen just had, that has a high flexibility. So the whole tip can depress itself quite a lot. Now, from there, you can sort of figure out what size the lettering is going to be. There's no point in writing small with a big tip. If you want to write small, use a small tip. So immediately you start to get a sense of how the brush pen, how my classification works. And then you have sort of exceptional tips. So there is I wonder if I have it here. There is a brush pen made by Kuretake. I don't think I have it to hand. And the whole, so if that's the tip there, the whole tip, if that's the ferrule, the whole tip will bend like this.
What?
So it's actually really difficult to use, but it produces some great work. So understanding what the tip is helps you to understand how to control it, and it helps you to understand what the size of the corresponding lettering should be. So for instance, the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pens that Milen was showing you, these ones. So the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pens,
They have also colorful versions?
yeah,
Oh.
there's tons of them. Here, take one. So these have a very, very, very sharp tip, so they can produce really fine lines. But they don't have the tip isn't large, so you can't do medium-sized lettering. Ideally, you don't want to write bigger than 6 millimeters with this tip because you can damage the tip. You press too hard, you damage the tip. If you are on the point a lot, you will wear the tip away, so it rounds itself off. So you don't end up with really sharp hairlines.
And you cannot refill this one, right?
No.
Because I discovered that you can refill actually the Pentel one.
Yes. But you can also use them as dip brush pens.
That's what I'm doing with the Tombow.
So once they run out of ink, you can dip them in ink and write with them. Of course, it depends on the ink, because some inks will not work properly. They need to be thin enough, like a fountain pen ink, rather than something like Sumi ink.
And watercolor works?
Sorry?
Watercolor works as well?
Watercolor works as well. Because that's thin. It has a lot more carrier, so water is the carrier. It has a lot more carrier than the pigment and binder ratio than something like, gouache. Don't use gouache in your tips.
Let's continue next week talking about brush pens. Let's jump into the last topic for today, which was...
turning your passion or hobby into a profession.
Yes.
Okay, this is a big topic and it's going to take us a little while to get through it, so we'll have a few episodes on it.
Really? More than 2 episodes?
Possibly.
Okay, before we start, I just want to tell you guys that this week and next week the episodes are gonna be 45 minutes, and after this we'll start releasing 90 minutes episodes. Also, for those of you who don't know yet, there are some prints released on our website. By the time I release this podcast, probably you'll be able to get one of those t-shirts. They are super limited, only 10 available. I don't know if Paul wants to... to
10
promote something.
t-shirts. What, you're writing them on the t-shirts individually or what?
No, but they're like everything is handmade, produced. This is not ready t-shirt. Everything it's sewed. Everything 100% calligraphy masters. The best t-shirts. It's super premium.
What's on the back?
On the back, nothing. There is just one more keep writing. Those are the best t-shirts ever.
All right. This is a difficult topic. So I've just done a podcast with Stevie, who's a very good friend of mine, and she and I discussed. We talked about this topic of, when you think you might think you're ready.
What you're doing? You're doing podcasts with other people?
What?
It's a different kind of podcast. When it's out, you will see. I've spoken about this with lots of people, So Becca at the Happily Ever Crafter, she and I talked about this on an interview she did with me 2 or 3 years ago. I've spoken about this with lots of other people on their lives and their feeds and on Clubhouse and on my feed as well. Really talked about it on my feed because I don't really see the point, because I've spoken about it with so many other people. But I think you need to be very, very, very careful with this, because if you take your hobby, if you take the thing you love and you turn it into work, you're going to need another hobby.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have another hobby, don't forget, this hobby, is your outlet. This is where you come to get away from the stress of the day, to get away from, frustration. You sit there and you do your little calligraphy, you do some flourishing, you smile to yourself like a crazy person. If you take that and you turn it into work, then it's not your hobby. And if you take your hobby away, you are going to need another outlet. So if you cannot find, excuse me.
Bless you.
If you cannot find another outlet, or if you cannot find another simple outlet, so I'm being really careful here, because when you come home, you take your pad out and you sit there and you do some writing. If you have to find another hobby that requires you to go outside of the house and get new tools and materials, and let's say you decide your new hobby is horse riding, right?
It's what?
Horse riding.
Okay.
That's a very big difference from sitting at home doing calligraphy to something that is a lot more active, and there's a chance that you could fall and break your hand. So there's no more calligraphy, right? So be very, very careful with this. If you want to turn your hobby into your profession, make sure you have another hobby. Now, I've been fortunate enough, I keep saying this because I am fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to be able to take this hobby and turn it into a profession, but still keep it as a hobby.
Like me.
So,
What are you laughing?
I'm laughing at you laughing. I'm not laughing at...
Anyways.
So why don't you explain to us a little bit about your perception of this, Milad?
Because like you're explaining it like in a different way. I mean, you're doing client work with calligraphy. I still make money out of it, but I'm not like doing client work, I make money out of advertising, out of selling products. It's totally different thing. I'm still able not every night, I don't have really much time, but I'm still able from time to time to sit and just do calligraphy and enjoy it, because I don't make my money by writing calligraphy. It's still involved.
And that's brilliant, because it shows that there are different ways to approach this hobby. So I trained as a calligrapher and heraldic artist. So I took my hobby and I went to school to study how to do this as a job. I didn't just sort of graduate into it. So by the time I'd finished my training, both, at Reading, at Reigate, and at Birkbeck, so 4 years of training. By the time I'd finished all of this, I was fixated on the fact that I was going to earn my living as a calligrapher. Now, my bread and butter was addressing envelopes. And Milen doesn't address envelopes, but he earns his living from calligraphy. Addressing envelopes is an amazing experience for a number of reasons. You sit there, you're concentrating on the lettering, you have to get it right because it's people's addresses. But you're really honing your skills, because when you do that volume of writing, you get better. But dealing with the clients might not be something you enjoy. And brides are not the easiest people to deal with because they are so highly strung and they are so tense about their wedding that they happily take it out on anybody around them. And then, after the wedding, they apologize, but the damage is sort of done. So if you can't deal with people and their stress, don't become a wedding calligrapher. If you can't deal with tight deadlines and people driving you crazy, calling you every 10 minutes going, oh, is it ready? Is it ready? Don't work in events doing, calligraphy for large events, because those two things will only seek to do one thing. It will make you hate your hobby, which is now your profession. So be really conscious of what you're doing here. There are calligraphers who only do poems. They do poems for clients and they love doing it. There are calligraphers who only do wedding calligraphy because they love weddings. So, to each their own. I was fortunate enough to be able to do wedding work, event work for the crown, do scrolls for people, write books, do inscriptions. And so I had a really massive range of projects that I could work on. Do stuff for advertising, just tons of stuff. Teaching. So I started teaching and then I stopped because I didn't enjoy it, because the mindset was not there. Then I came back to teaching. I wrote a book, and so I was able to make money in different ways. And now I'm still teaching, but I'm teaching on Zoom. So,
what's your favorite way to make money out of calligraphy, or like the way that you enjoyed the most?
Okay, so I love teaching. For me, I do a lot of research, and my aim is to always find better ways to help people learn more accurately and to learn faster. So I'm always coming up with new approaches to calligraphy. And that, I love helping people. I love helping people get better.
Do you?
I do. If they're committed to it, I'm more than happy to help.
But most people are.
If you think you're going to call me up and waste my time, I will lose my temper with you. So you want help? I'm right there with you, but you have to put the work in. So I love that. I love sharing my knowledge. I love teaching. I love watching my students get better because of the way, the approach that I have. Recently, I've started designing products. So of course we have the lining template,
which I still don't have.
So it's just, so we've updated the file because we had to remove UK.
Now it's going to be Portugal.
And put EU.
Okay.
So we've just updated the file for the lining template and we've added some more lines and some more holes to it.
When I'm getting one of those,
well, it's just gone to the manufacturers. They will let me know when they can do it. And then, you and I could talk about a giveaway.
Yes, and maybe we can do an episode talking about how people can use it.
Yes, I mean, when you see it working, you're just like, what? Everybody who bought it, they sold out in 4 days. Everybody who bought it has said to me, I've not used a ruler since. I've never been able to rule up such straight, even lines. This is an amazing invention. So I'm very, very happy about it.
Awesome.
So we have 60 products that I'm working on.
What? 60? 60?
And the products will come out every 3 or 4 months. Something new will come out because these products came out of my suffering. So, addressing envelopes and doing client-based work produced lots of problems.
I just want to say something like, okay, Paul, you're sharing this stuff, but people don't get confused just because Paul is now into a moment where he creates products. This is not something that all of you can do. Don't forget, Paul has more than 30 years experience. So don't get excited and, oh, now I'm gonna make also a ruler and
Okay, so if you want to design a product, make sure the product is usable.
Yes.
My products have come out of my suffering. So there is a product that we're working on. We've just sent it to be prototyped. It's now on its third prototype. It allows you to see lines on any color paper. It doesn't use lasers because you shouldn't be using lasers because it's really bad for your eyesight. And it will really change the way people write. But I came up with this idea because we had tons of different kinds of envelopes to write on, and sometimes the envelopes are lined, so you can't see through them with a light table. And if you rule lines on them and you erase on them, some of the papers, they would get sort of dull where the eraser was.
Don't give too much info. Some people can copy and steal.
So the products that I'm making have come out of the fact that I needed something that would do X, and so I jerry-rigged something, and now we're actually making them into something that you can use. So that's another way that you can sort of
this is exactly the same like me and Calligraphy Masters. Yeah. I did it out of my suffering. There was no thing like it. And we're gonna continue talking on this topic next week, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Leave a comment, share with friends. I hope you enjoyed. As always, keep writing accurately.